You may have caught frequent headlines wondering whether the Indian government is going to meet its fiscal deficit target. But what is a fiscal deficit and why do we care so much about it? The government is set to run a fiscal deficit when the expenditure is higher than the revenue it generates. In most cases, it bridges this gap through market borrowings. A fiscal deficit is not always considered bad. Under some conditions, such as an economic slowdown or a recession, economists actually recommend that the government runs a larger fiscal deficit. Higher government spending can actually boost demand and lift an economy out of its doldrums. This is called pump priming the economy. Running a deficit is also seen as justified for developing economies which may need to spend more to build infrastructure. But there are downsides to running a fiscal deficit. For one, if the government borrows more from the market, the cost of borrowing goes up for everyone, including the government. Also, a fiscal deficit can prove to be inflationary. This can be understood in two ways. If the government spending generates more demand for the same amount of goods and services, those get dearer. The inflation impact also depends on whether the deficit is a result of higher spending or lower revenues. Higher deficits can also lead to inflation if a country's central bank monetizes the deficit by buying the central government's bonds. In this scenario, the money supply in an economy increases, which leads to inflation. In India's case, there is one other reason why the government must stick to its fiscal targets. The revised Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act requires that the deficit be brought down to 3% by 2017-18, but that target has eluded the government so far. The fiscal deficit for 2018-19 remained above that at 3.4% of GDP.